Hey guys, my name is Joey Thomas, entrepreneur and small business educator here with 17 Hats. Today we're diving into a topic that I really enjoy, and that is sales. We are going to talk about 9 mistakes that we make when we are trying to sell. Now in today's video though, we're only going to go over the first 3. So I'm going to break this up into 3 parts so that you guys can really take it in and really take each point and apply it to your sales process. Now, we know that in every small business, there's one thing we just have to do well, and that's to be able to sell. But it's not always easy. We run into a lot of obstacles. Sometimes we get really nervous. Sometimes maybe we're just having a bad day. And there's a lot of mistakes that we can fall into without even really realizing that we're making these mistakes. So hopefully, as I go through these little mistakes that we make in sales, that you guys can recognize these and start to make some adjustments. All right, so let's dive right in. The first mistake that I see, and I see this quite often, is just talking too much. And you know what, guys? There's a lot of reasons why we do this, but the more we talk, the less we actually show we care about them. And it's best said in this quote by Teddy Roosevelt. It says, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." It's one of my favorite quotes, and it stands true even today, especially in sales. No one's going to care how much you know. No one's going to care if you're a subject matter expert or if you're the best in the world at something if you don't really care about the person you're speaking to. If you show that you care about them, guess what? They're going to open up and receive everything that you have to say. But you know, there's a lot of reasons why we might talk too much, and you might recognize some of these reasons with yourself. Sometimes we talk a lot because we feel like we have to prove ourselves. And that comes from a lack of confidence in ourselves, what we're offering. I've done a video on the imposter syndrome. It could have something to do with that. So we just tend to talk and talk and talk. Most of the time, we're trying to convince ourselves and not really the client. So sometimes maybe we just get a little nervous. But the reason we get nervous is because we don't really know the product very well, or we don't know the client enough to make a connection with them, right? So if I was selling a product and I don't know how it's made, I don't know the background, I don't know what the materials are, I would also be a little nervous, especially if I was hit with some objections. So know your products really well, and you can really handle some of those nerves and slow down, be a little bit more confident, right? Now, another reason why I tend to talk too much in sales is sometimes I don't know where the finish line is. I don't know where I'm ending. Imagine if you're running in a new neighborhood, right? You're exercising and you're running, but you have no idea where you're gonna end up. You just keep running and running, and you're just like, could make you a little nervous at the end if you're lost. And in a conversation, it's possible to feel lost, especially when you don't know where you're going. And that feeling of being lost, you just try to talk your way out of it. That's another reason. Now, I would say one of the more common reasons I've seen why people talk a lot is because you're just really bubbly. You're just a very lively person. It's fantastic, and you know what? More power to you. Go with it. Go with that personality. But your client might be a little overshadowed. Maybe you're taking up all the air in the room, right? By talking a lot. I don't mean to offend you, but sometimes that will happen. And so we have to give it to them in small chunks and in moments, right? And make them feel welcome, because listening is really the superpower that we have to develop as salespeople. All right. So talking too much is one of the major issues that we tend to run into. Now, patience is really, really key. And one of the mistakes I see a lot in sales is discussing price at the beginning of a conversation. We have to have patience in how we move through a conversation when we're talking to a potential client. Or let's say they've already come in. They've come in, they're sitting in front of you, and they're engaging in a conversation. Now, here's what happens if you start talking about price too early. If you start with price really early, you are allowing them to use price as the anchor. And in psychology, anchoring is usually the first piece of information that someone hears or experiences, and everything that they experience afterwards is really tied to that, or like a frame of reference, right? So if we start talking about pricing a little too early in our conversation, everything you tell them, how much time you're spending, the materials you're using, the whole process, they're going to start comparing that to the price that you gave them. But instead, if you give all of the value up front, build it up and build it up to the point where price is no longer really a concern. And then you bring up price at the end. And just that simple switch right there can really help someone along the right path. Because if you keep them in that money and price mindset, they can get stuck more often than not. So make sure that the anchor and the first piece of information is not price, but its value. Okay. And the last one for today, the third mistake is not really being able to handle objections well. You know, we're perfectly fine until our client throws an objection our way. And when that objection comes, it can rattle us, right? It could throw us off our game because we had it going. We were smooth sailing until boom, a price objection or some type of other objection. It could be a million different things, right? It could be just, I'm too busy. I don't know, that takes a long time. That's a little expensive. It could be any objection really. So what I'm going to share with you right now is just kind of how to handle all objections and how to frame all objections. So I want you guys to start thinking about that. Maybe even brainstorm, write down your 5 most common objections and think about it using these next 3 tips I'm about to give you. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 simple steps to overcome the objection, okay? So 3 steps to overcome the objection. Number 1, first and always acknowledge and empathize that the objection exists. Do not pretend, do not argue with them, do not pretend it's not there. Don't make them feel silly for having that objection or that they just don't know. Acknowledge it. Understand that this is, that it might be common or a lot of people have that objection. Make them feel comfortable that they are asking you these questions. So once you acknowledge and empathize with them, you can move on to the next part. And the next part is to ask questions for clarity. See, when somebody asks you a question, listen. Remember I said talking too much, especially here, is detrimental. I want you to listen and then clarify what they're asking you. Now, once you ask questions back to them, you're showing them that you actually care. This is a form of connection. Show them that you actually care. Once you ask those questions and you really understand what the objection is, then you provide the solution and move forward. Move past it. Don't be afraid to really listen. Provide the solution, the answer to that objection, and just move forward. Don't feel like they have to give you the green light. You give yourself the green light. One way to really help you overcome objections is to already have some of the answers to their objections before you ever begin. What I mean by that is, when I get a lead that comes in, I always send a questionnaire. And this questionnaire, it's short, but it provides me some insight. It helps me know what kind of person I'm actually dealing with, what they might value, right? What they're really looking for. And so having that questionnaire helps me get my mind prepared just in case there are any objections. A lot of times, just having the questionnaire and speaking to it, I can actually avoid quite a few objections. And I use 17 hats and automate a questionnaire to go out as soon as that lead comes in to make it super, super simple. So thank you guys for hanging out today and listening to this video about the common mistakes that we make during sales. I gave you the first 3 today, so make sure to find part 2 so that you can continue to get the 9 tips. Once again, thank you. Make sure to subscribe to the 17 Hats channel, like this video, and turn on that notification bell. I will see you again soon.